Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine series of interviews. I'm Jason Masker, Field CTO with Stratascale, and we're participating with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Niresh Rajah, Managing Director, Head of Data, RegTech, and Digital Advisor Practice at Grant Thornton. Niresh, how are you today?
Good, thank you, Jason.
What are the biggest trends that you're currently focused on, and how can firms assure they're prepared and have the necessary skills in place really to address those?
Sure. I think in terms of those trends, they're actually there are a multitude of trends depending on the industry, and also based on where an organization is on their data journey. The key trends we're looking at helping organizations and supporting organizations with are, the first one is around how to put in place effective data strategies. And that data strategy in the context of digital, which everybody becoming digitally enhanced and engaged, which has been accelerated through COVID. So that's been one key component. Data strategy aligned to digital and making sure our clients are able to better serve their customers and digitally engage their customers, but having an effective data strategy. That's a trend we're seeing, so developing those data strategies. The second key trend we're seeing is actually what I call data foundations. And data foundation is actually, as a chief data officer, getting the arms around the organization's existing legacy of data, whether it's customer data, product data, transactional data, through good data management, through master data management, putting in data quality practices, looking at data lineage. And we see that in financial services specifically, banks are slightly ahead of the curve in terms of, because of BCBS 239 and other regulations. But there are other, insurance, asset managers, large corporates, etc., in oil and gas and mining and pharmaceutical, etc. They are actually investing in that space, and we're seeing that as a key trend, that in terms of actually investing in data foundations through data cataloging tools, data quality tools, and creating programs of work. The third area we're seeing as the biggest trend is actually, probably prefaced it earlier on, it's ESG. ESG reporting and disclosures is absolutely underpinned. Data is at the heart of that. So how to actually deliver ESG disclosures, how to actually provide a really clear view on net zero, carbon emissions, etc., is based on understanding your data, especially on internal data, linking with the external data. So we're seeing that as a huge trend going forward. And then the last one, big trend we can talk about is, what we're seeing is actually how to actually integrate various ecosystems. I mentioned ecosystem partners, and there are some fantastic tools and technologies and data vendors out there. Organizations need to actually bring that together with their existing architecture to be able to create solutions for the future and create innovation for better products, better customer service. And we're seeing that as a huge trend. And I see that part actually growing even more because of things like open finance here in the UK, on the back of CMA PSD2, open banking. So open banking came along a few years ago. Now there's open finance. And so data sharing is going to be a huge, huge component. And on the back of open finance, in financial services, we're going to see open data, which could hit multiple industries. How to share data across multiple jurisdictions, multiple organizations to create better products and services for customers and clients.
That's interesting. One of the things you mentioned, data management understanding, actually comes up quite a lot. And you mentioned differences in firms by vertical in their competency. Has that importance for data management understanding increased? How's that been changing over the last few years? Do you see differences in vertical for that as well, similar to the competencies you mentioned before, or is it increasing across the board?
Yeah, I think we see quite a marked difference actually, banking it has probably slightly ahead of the curve because they've had to adopt good data management practices as a result of BCBS 239. Now, having said that, those are the global, G6, global systemically important banks that have had to do that. You have the more domestic banks and players who still need to do that. which is a huge challenge for them. And then with all regulation, people are either materially compliant as opposed to fully compliant or partially compliant. So there's more work to be done in large global banks still in that space, but they're slightly ahead of the curve. If you look at the other verticals in financial services, in insurance and asset management, it's interesting because the regulators in the UK, for instance, the Bank of England and the FCA have brought out data transformation plans. And they're raising the bar for insurance firm, asset managers, and various other organizations to be at the same level of quality and data aggregation as approaching BCBS 239 for banks. So we're seeing insurance firms, asset managers, and other financial services firms having to now start the data management journey much more in anger than they've traditionally been behind banking. Then you look at the other areas of pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, retail, etc. And in those verticals, it's actually quite different depending on two or three things. Competitive position. So where they're seeing, let's say in the supermarket arena, we're seeing certain organizations really in retail wanting to leverage data management more because they can see the value of how having better value customer data is going to be really important in terms of sales, and it's driving that. Oil and gas, energy, you're again seeing that, and that's driven by really sustainability as a key component of how good data management has to be in there for sustainability reasons and what needs to happen. So these and pharmaceuticals, I think, they've been fairly good in terms of investing in data management practices because, it's a very heavily regulated industry. So you're seeing differences in terms of data management. I think the two things which are standing out in the last couple of years, or actually this year, that I'm seeing, which is slightly different. The first is, things like data catalog and master data management as a concept to bring data fabric to the fore. So how do you actually link things together? And I think technology and platforms have improved slightly to be able to start thinking about the data mesh and data fabric type aspects to actually progress data management. The second, I think, chief data officers are becoming slightly more savvy in actually articulating in terms of data literacy to the board of how important data management is as a pre-qualifier to achieve better customer data, better product data, and as a way of delivering benefits. So I think that's where the industry is going. But there's unfortunately a lot more work to be done in data management.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have some great observations there by vertical and different drivers, right? Yet kind of a similar motion. And why do you think that is? Why is data management so important for organizations to make that effective? Or maybe how did we get in such a state? Was it not important before? I find that hard to believe, right? But what's changing that's making it much more critical?
Sure, and I think that's a fundamental question. So what is different, I think, or what's changing? I think data management, to your point, has always been important. But I think the nuance of how important is a change based on two or three things. One is the volume of actual data that we have now compared to 10 years ago. It is humongously different in terms of the volume of data one has to consume and ingest, any organization. The second is really looking at, I think, digitalization and the progress of digitalization when you're having customer platforms and customer interaction platforms. Without data, you're not able to service customers digitally. And so that, the last 5 years has increased digitalization, but in the last 18 months to 2 years, COVID has taken that to a whole different level. And for that, you need good quality data and good focus on data management. And the third component is really the regulators in terms of driving better focus on data for risk aggregation purposes, for risk reporting and regulatory reporting purposes. And they're wanting better quality, better integrated data in terms of protecting the customers, etc. So I think those are the key elements of why data management is so important. And if I bring that to life in terms of, well, how do we data manage quite such a broad topic? What is that firms need to get right? So data management, the simplest way for me is, you focus on 5 or 6 components of data management. The first is get the master data management right. So what do I mean by that is try to understand what data is truly important and valuable to you as an organization. through looking at what people call critical data elements, key data elements. And we've been working with a number of clients trying to help them actually move from 40, 50,000 data elements that they may have flowing through the organization, and how they get that to a more manageable number in terms of 2,000. And if you take customer, as in viewpoint, or end customer, things like name, address, date of birth, etc., become much more important to get the focus on that, right? And so focusing on key data elements, critical data elements, is an important part of data management within, if you look at master data management. And then, and so that actually solves a lot of issues in terms of customer complaints, gonaways, where people have gone to different addresses, contact history. So that will solve a lot of viewpoints and cataloging. This is the most important data of a customer. This is the most important data of a product. This is the most important data of a transaction, and employee data, etc. You then have data quality, which I think goes hand in hand with good master data management. Is how do you actually set the rules around quality of data? And then linked to that is governance, stewardship around data. And then you get to the other parts of, how do you trace through data lineage and have good data architecture. So I hope that's helpful, but I think that's why data management is so important to get right. And getting that right as a foundation block is crucial for organizations trying to leverage, trying to actually monetize data through data science and data platforms. With poor quality data and poor data catalogs and master data, there's no way organizations can actually truly derive value and monetize data.
Yeah, that management becomes a rather critical foundation. Something else. So you mentioned also ESG. Let's talk about that for a minute. Can you talk about what that is, why the focus there, and what do you think firms should be focused on? Do you have any advice as to where they should start?
Sure. I mean, we've been quite fortunate to work with a number of our clients in the asset management space and bank space who are actually, and we've been helping them with their ESG agenda using data as the key to solve it. And so if I break your question into kind of subcomponents, why data is such a key thing for ESG, if we take environment, social, and governance, and then you start to break that up even further in terms of net zero commitments, carbon emissions in the environment, social components around employees, around diversity, inclusion, etc., and then in governance, various different scores around a number of different components. The regulatory requirements under the disclosures that firms need to now report this year in 2023 and beyond. For firms to be able to do that, they need good curated data, which traces back to how they're going to articulate their carbon emissions, how they're going to articulate how they're going to get to net zero, how do they measure that? The other part is a lot of that data within environment and social, if we take that part of it, is only available externally in terms of external data that either rating providers are providing or data vendors and data sources are providing. And so the key part is how do firms, and we've been supporting some firms actually think about their ESG data strategy and then their ESG data taxonomy. So what do I mean by that is an ESG data strategy is a firm to really articulate clearly how they're going to meet disclosures, regulatory reporting, and their CEO and their board making net zero and other commitments to the world. How do they actually trace back from that over a 3 to 5 year period to say, this is the data we're going to collect, measure, curate, and integrate to be able to achieve those targets, and how they're going to measure that? That's kind of a really fundamental part of an ESG data strategy. The second part of that strategy is, where are they going to get the data from? How much are they going to procure? Who are they going to procure from? Because there's a multiple set of vendors, Bloomberg, MSCI, Sustainalytics, ICE, a number of those. How do they link that in terms of understanding which data is quite important for different components of diversity and inclusion, or around suppliers, or around carbon emissions, the different components of ESG. So being able to work that through an ESG data model and a data taxonomy is fundamental. And then the third part of that is actually how does firm then visualize and provide that for access to their customers, to investors, to stakeholders and shareholders through an ESG data platform and data analytics platform. And we were again fortunate to help a global asset manager. We helped them build an ESG data platform and an ESG screener, which actually shows, this is the bad stock or stock that customers don't want to buy. which is around, maybe perhaps tobacco or gambling. So you screen those stock out. And I think, rather than I think I know, the investors are actually becoming much, much more savvy in terms of sustainability. So that's kind of quite, as the investors are getting, and this we're talking about high net worth individuals and institutional investors, as they get more savvy and saying, show me the sustainable stocks that you're going to point, or we want to only work with companies. So this is where I think data is fundamental to solving that issue.
That's terrific. Thank you for your time today, Niresh. This is a great conversation. Please visit us at cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.